Shout out to USARK and all USARK members. If you don't know what USARK is, don't be ashamed. Just go ahead and click the third link in the description below. See what USARK is all about, okay? You never know when legislations are going to hit your backyard, so that's why it's very important to consider becoming a USARK member today. These numbers really do matter, and they look at it for consideration when it comes to battling legislation. So first and foremost, thank you, Phil Goss. Thank you to anybody out there who partners up and volunteers with USARK organization. Thank you for anyone out there who's a USARK member. And if you can't become a USARK member today, please talk about it on your platforms. Let your neighbors know, let all your pet stores know what USARK is here for, and it's here to fight for our animal rights. Thank you to every USARK member and USARK supporter out there.
T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 20 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Trap Talk Reptile Network, coolest reptile network in the world. Episode 634 on the Tree Tuesday. Jason Patterson from Australia tapping in with me. I'm your boy MJ, and of course with me, Bill Stiegel, and not Marshall. It's not Marshall.
That's my new name, not Marshall.
The one and only Alex Warren.
That's right.
What a great night it's going to be. Alex, once again, welcome to the podcast. What an honor it is to have you. I miss Marshall already.
I miss him too.
Dude, what's going on, boys? Bill, how you living? How you guys both living? I guess I'm asking both of you guys what the progress has been like with the new arrivals from this year. Why don't you catch us up, Bill? What's going on with all the babies?
Things are going great here. Really kind of not much update since last week. The animals on the ground are doing great. Alex is doing a good job helping me out with some of the clutch that's hatched here. And we're just looking forward. We got 2 more in the incubator, 9 days away from the next freight train clutch to hatch. So super excited about that. 13 eggs that still all look good. So we'll see how that eventually ends up. You know, it's kind of nervous time now, just starting to lower the temps a little bit, maybe in a few days, and starting to aerate the box a little bit, and just keep our fingers crossed, say those prayers to the Chondro gods and Rico, and hopefully get a good hatch rate.
So many stages of nervousness, isn't there? It's like, God damn it. It's like, first you want a healthy clutch, right? You want them all out of the female. That's one stage of nervousness. And then you want the eggs to go the distance, you know. And that next stage for sure is that day 40, drop the temps. Because then you have these eggs that look good all the way up to that point sometimes, and then they just go to shit. And you're like, the fuck?
No, I mean, you know, I think it's pretty common that, like, you know, to lose an egg or two early, you know, that's even has veins. But the more common scenario is these things go all the way to the damn distance.
Yeah.
You break your heart on the last day, this bullshit where they pip or stick their head out and then die in the egg or crawl halfway out. I know Gary experienced that with a recent clutch, and you know, we've talked about it. We've tried everything to try to mitigate that with temperature manipulation, lowering those temps a lot during the end, a little bit during the end. And I finally just got to the point where I'm just like, man, I'm just going to go back to what I did 10 years ago. Pretty much straight bake them 87.5, maybe that last week lower half a degree, and you know, just see what happens. It's so frustrating. It's just been my experience when we've lowered these temps like the last 10 days, and you know, one will pip, and then you wait a day and you pip the rest, and they stay in the egg forever. And it's just so, you know, that's just such a frustrating part of the journey. So I don't know. I've kind of come full circle.
Yeah, I mean, Alex, you're no stranger to being dragged in the mud when it comes to this shit. You know, especially when it comes to the point of you see movement in the egg, and then next thing you know, nothing happens, and you have to go in there and to realize it just died in the egg, and you're like,
yeah,
the fuck.
You know, that's kind of the thing is that, like, you're not sure at what point you're supposed to intervene, right? Like, are you supposed to intervene at like day 52, 53, 55? Like, is it caught up in the umbilical cord? Like, what's going on in there? And, you know, like Bill said, he kind of changed his methods a little bit this time, and he dropped the temps, and they've hatched out a little bit later. And it's just those 5 days are just so nerve wracking. You know, you just don't know what's going on, or if you should do anything, or what's happening. So
I was gonna ask you guys, have you gotten a lot of umbilical cord ties, like knots this year, Bill, at all, or no?
Not a single one this year.
That's good.
But you know, that's good. The bad part is I'm still, you know, I guess this year's no different than others. I've had everything from 1 out of 15 hatch successfully to 15 out of 15 hatch successfully, and then other clutches that have been everywhere in between. So it's just a roller coaster. You never, you know, I never get used to it. I try to just say it's out of my control, forget about it, go to sleep. But it's harder said than done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll get this out of the way. That fucking goddamn Hail Mary gizzard eating neonate of mine that I was praying to God wasn't going to prolapse, fucking prolapsed for the 5th time, and it hit the freezer this morning. So God bless.
We've talked about it before. I don't think I've ever successfully established a neo that has prolapsed 2 times or more.
Yeah, I feel like once it does it more than once, it's unlikely. And I just think it's because it's something within the animal that it loses the power to keep it in after that or something. I don't fucking know, but all I know is 2 and done for sure moving forward. And it is what it is. This was more of a like, will gizzards keep this thing from fucking sticking, you know, out? And it ate 3 gizzard meals before it actually prolapsed. So, but it never, you know, it wasn't really shitting either. So I'm like, fuck it.
Was that animal perching normally, MJ?
Yeah, it's perching great.
Yeah.
Really?
Wish I could be the expert and tell you, you know, what's going on. But to be honest, I have no idea.
And not even a problematic eater, fucking great eater, like just a good animal. Like literally, like there was no issues up to like the 15th meal or something. And I was like, fuck.
What, 15?
You know? 15 meals, yeah.
Wow, that's pretty late. I don't know. That's kind of the envelope that I've, you know, usually once they hit 12 to 15 meals, then I feel really pretty solid about them. But you never know. That's why I keep these things 20 meals minimum. You know, I don't want to send out an animal and, you know, 2 weeks later it prolapses.
I agree.
And luckily, I've never had that happen. You know, I've managed prolapses in house here, and the ones that don't make it, don't make it.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, I'm excited for tonight's guest. Alex, I know you and I chop it up about breeders and stuff, but what do you know about Jason Patterson or they, you know, the Australian scene when it comes to chondro breeders?
Oh, man. You know, I wish I could say a little bit more. To be honest, I was so busy today that I meant to go on and, you know, do some research and hit people up, but I don't really know too much about him at this point. I really like to, you know, sit down and have a conversation. I always like the Australian, the Aussies, you know, they're always interesting to talk to. They're so limited on what they can do, and it's amazing what they've done with that. So it'd be interesting to talk to him.
I'm kind of the same way. I got on his page today and looked. He was on an episode of The Expert and the Idiot.
Yeah, with Adam.
And I was just curious, you know, I want to ask him and find out, you know, what he was on there for. Was he on there for green trees, or was he, talking about other species? Because if you look on his Instagram, he works with quite a bit of stuff, rough scales and other animals. So I'll be curious to see what their conversation was.
Yeah, you know, listen, it's not, they don't have the numbers. I feel like when it comes to people I follow chondro wise, like I follow obviously mostly American breeders, but the handful of Australian breeders that I've been following the last few years, this dude's one of them. So, I mean, this is for me, like, I think it's awesome bringing this dude on because it's someone whose work I've been admiring. He keeps reptiles outside as well, has diamond pythons, which are really cool. So, you know, this is going to be a fun episode. I'm looking forward to it.
And I always like to see the circles that the Australian guys run in.
Yeah.
You know, like how tight knit is the Australian green tree community? You know, it's got to be really pretty tight knit. It's tight knit over here. So I can imagine that it's even more tight knit over there because less people are producing. So we'll be curious to see, you know, who he knows. You know, we've had quite a few Australian guests on now. MJ, correct me if I'm wrong. How many close to half a dozen, maybe 4.
Yeah, about 5 or 6. Not enough. Definitely, there's a lot more for sure. I have a list. There's definitely a lot more. And I think Jason could talk about the growth over the last couple of years. I definitely feel like their community, as far as the chondro stuff goes, is growing for sure over there.
Yeah, I hope so. It ought to be. It's the motherland,
For reals. All right, before we get to tonight's guest, I just want to say, just to remind you guys, Trap Talk Reptile Network is 7 days a week, Monday through Sunday. Wherever you listen to any episode, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. All the major audio platforms, Buzzsprout, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to Trap Talk Reptile Network. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. If you're looking for exclusive content, if you want to get invited to special events like Trap Fest 2025, come join the Trap Talk Patreon family. First link description below. Join the Discord. Join the amazing Instagram group chat. All right, over amazing 300 reptile keepers that are part of the Patreon family. So thank you for all the love and support. You guys are awesome and looking to add some really cool things to the Patreon family. I want to say tonight's episode is brought to you by Brian Susan over at SUNDOWN Reptiles. Go to sundownreptiles.com. Look at all the high-end projects that this guy has when it comes to Bronia, Kahuas, tree monitors. Dude, I'm telling you, next level stuff. And Brian's one of the best doing it. Follow him on Instagram as well. SUNDOWN Reptiles. Find all the links in the description below. Also, tonight's episode is brought to you by Blake Exotic Feeders, #1 quail in the game. If you want homegrown quail sent to your doorstep, anywhere from button quail all the way to extra large quail, this is your guy right here, Blake Exotic Feeders. Thank you so much, Blake. Make sure you hit him up on Instagram or just go to his website. Find that link in the description below. Also, tonight's episode is brought to you by Gary Scavino, GS Reptiles on YouTube. Best way to learn about the coolest stuff that you can keep in the reptile game from this man right here. Again, GS Reptiles on YouTube. Subscribe to his YouTube channel and follow him on Instagram as well. Thank you so much, Gary. And then, last but not least, shout out to Mark Hager over at Texas Chondros. That's right. Go to Instagram, type in TX Chondros, and make sure you follow Mark Hager. Look at all the amazing work and other fellow Texas chondro breeders that he puts on the map. Does a really good job when it comes to that. And thank you so much for your support, Mark. Really means a lot. And yeah, boys, you ready to bring on Jason? You ready? You guys ready to go down under?
Let's bring him on. Let's do it.
Let's go.
All right, listen, shout out to everyone in the chats. You guys are beautiful, but do what you got to do to get your mind right. Do what you got to do to stay hydrated. This is episode 634. Jason Patterson, Aussie Arboreals, coming at you right now. Let's go.
Good.
You ready for do more in the future? Trap Talk podcasts?
Yes.
Man.
Only Trap Talk. Exclusive.
Yes.
Tell 'em.
Exclusive. Oh.
So stop calling us.
Rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the crop, I love it or not. I'm hot from the hop to the rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with everybody, we do it. Everybody, we do it. Do it. Do it. Do it. Rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up, rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up, rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up, rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up.
And we're live, episode 634. Jason Patterson from Australia. What is up, Jason? What is up, Jason? You there?
G'day, guys. I
Oh.
can't hear anything, though.
Everything was just perfect, bro.
The audio dropped out, MJ, bud.
Come,
Oh,
I
no.
would fix it then. I would fix it.
Log out and come back in.
Yeah, we just
Audio check worked, and now I've got no audio coming through.
Yeah, you might want to exit out and come back in. I feel like Marshall's here and he's not. It's so weird.
We can hear
Can't
you.
hear you
fine.
down here.
We
You
can
can't-
hear you fine.
You can't hear us, Jason, at all?
I'm going to drop out and come back in, fellas. I don't know what's going on. Sorry.
I'll see you. Hey, listen, we checked, I think, 3 times to make sure that was working fine, and it was.
He's halfway across the world, right?
Yeah.
About 10. I think it's 10:15 his time or 9:15. Anyways, he'll come back in.
I was going to ask him. At least he's not like Sally has to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to do this.
Dude, and Sal did not look tired at all. Like he looked completely normal. All right, let's see what's going on. Jason Patterson.
G'day, fella.
Yes.
Oh, there it is.
Oh, mate, the anxiety. I heard the 30-second countdown, and then I just saw your mouths moving for the next 10 minutes.
Good morning, mate.
You're good, buddy.
G'day, guys. Yeah,
Top of the day for you. What time is it over there again?
11:15 a.m. in Sydney.
All right. Fuck yeah. Always love it.
Wednesday.
Wednesday, that day.
It's all in the it's all in the tree Wednesday over here.
Yeah, listen, thanks for being here, Jason. Why don't you kind of inform everyone how long you've been in the game? You know, I feel like I've been following your work for at least a handful of years now, but I could be wrong. So why don't you get us up to speed when it comes to all that?
Yeah, no, thanks, guys. Yeah, I've been keeping reptiles for a long time. My earliest, fondest memories were actually when I was growing up. My uncle was keeping some diamond pythons outside. We're talking, I was probably 5, right? We're talking like 30 odd years ago. Wow. And, you know, from a young age of like 8 and 9, I was chasing local lizards around the local rivers, you know, water dragons and bearded dragons and blue tongues. And I remember being about 8 or 9 years old, begging my mum and dad for a snake. And they were pretty much saying, no way in hell. Not happening on our watch. But, you know, as you guys know, we've got licensing systems down here, and you've got to be, well, back then you had to be 13 to have your own license. And my mother was like, when you're 13, we'll get your license, you can have a snake. Well, I think she assumed that I'd get over that desire, and that didn't happen. So 13, you know, eventually came around. I got my license and got my first snake. So I've been keeping snakes for, I don't know, maybe 25 years or something. So it's been a while. But in terms of the greens, I got my first greens in 2011. I got a pair of green tree pythons, and they were a mix, locality mix. They were half Australian, half Sarong type. Right. And I had them for, I didn't have them for long, a few years. And then, you know, I was in the process of buying my first house and things like that, moving out of home. So I kind of sold them to cash in on it and help buy a house. And I got back into greens only a few years ago. In actual fact. So, but I've been keeping for a while. I've been breeding different species for a little while as well. I think I got my first clutch when I was like 15 of spotted pythons. So, but been keeping herps for a while, dabbled in the lizards as well. Used to have some lace monitors, bred them once as well.
Wow. I got a question about the permit process. Obviously, you know, times always seem to evolve, but like, is it just as strict as it was to get a permit for a green tree python when it was when you were 13, or has that changed over the years?
Changed a little bit. So a couple of categories of licenses, 2 main ones for your non-venomous stuff. So once, I believe it's still when you're like 13, you can get there's actually another category now. You can also get like a companion license, which is you can have like one pet children's python or a bearded dragon or something. Like it's basically for those who just want a pet. Yeah. But you've got in the state of New South Wales, there are 2 main ones. You can get your basics license, which are for your easier to keep species. And then once you're 18, once you're 18 and you've had at least, I believe it's 2 years experience, you can get an advanced license. And the green tree pythons in New South Wales are on an advanced category license. So you can't just decide tomorrow I'm going to get a green tree python. No, you're going to have to get a carpet python or something for a couple of years first. Whoa. And then you're going to have to get your upgraded license, and then you can start buying greens.
And Jason, how strictly is that regulated? I mean, have you ever had an authority like come in, or like, how much do you have?
I haven't. So it gets a bit silly. Like it'd probably be easier if it was a national license, but every state has its different regulations, right? So the state of Queensland, I think you guys had Liam on last week, totally different licensing system. Western Australia, totally different again. So in different states, you can keep different species. There's different category systems. So I can't even tell you what the licensing systems are in other states or what category things are on. Because even when I sell something to someone out of state or acquire something from another state, we have to go through an import-export permit application process as well. So it's just a lot of paperwork. And really, I think it's just about the government or whoever's looking after it getting a bit of cash for conservation and things like that, right? But like the reality is it's not very well. I don't think it's very tightly regulated here in terms of spot inspections. But your licensing conditions are that, in theory, they can knock on your door and come for an inspection of your collection, and they can count your animals and make sure the number of animals is what you've got showing on your records and things like that. It's there, but I'd say it's reasonably strict, but you know, it's a bit, I think it's a bit dated. I think a national way of doing it would be a lot better. But now it has toughened up a little here. So in New South Wales now, so my first go-inners, my first big go-inners were lace monitors, right? You now couldn't get lace monitors in New South Wales unless you've kept a basic category monitor species for 2 years. I'd never done that. My first monitor species was 2 lace monitors, actually 3 at the time, right? Yeah. And now my first experience with monitors prior to that, I'd had bearded dragons and blue tongues.
And I'll definitely say, as you'll probably agree, Jason, lace monitor is no beginner monitor for anybody. I don't give a fuck.
Not at all.
Bill, just imagine getting into reptiles and you're getting into mainland retics, and that's all you want in the room.
Yeah.
That's coverable too, I swear.
I had some encounters. They got my finger once. I nearly lost my finger. Probably a stretch of the imagination there, but I got tagged pretty hard.
I miss Mac Drainalis, but I ain't got time for that shit. No, thank you. I'm good.
I miss them. So, but in today's climate, if you want a green tree python, you do have to keep a python species for a couple of years. So I wouldn't. Anyone coming up through the ranks now wouldn't be able to get a bearded dragon, or maybe they could, but they wouldn't be able to keep a children's python for a couple of years and then get an advanced license capable of keeping a go-inner. You have to keep a common species. So it's changed there. Back then, I just got an advanced license and I could buy anything on the advanced license.
What about venomous? Can you guys keep it there, or is it super hard?
There's more categories of licensing. So, you know, we're talking basic and advanced license, but there are more senior advanced licenses. So to keep venomous stuff here, you know, your first categories like your red bellies and stuff, which are considered either a little less dangerous. It could be behaviorally they're less aggressive, or they're less challenging to handle, or just less dangerous in terms of their toxicities. But you also would need to have like your first aid certificate. You need to have like, you know, the animals need to be in locked enclosures in a locked room. And there needs to be sort of some evacuation plan in place. So if you get tagged, somebody can help you. So it's just a higher level of caution. And again, you'd need to keep something that's an introductory, you know, a lapid species, like a red belly, before you can get into things like death adders and brown snakes and, you know, taipans and stuff. So
it's so crazy.
It's a lot of work.
Because in Texas, you can go to a hot show and anybody can buy the most venomous snakes in the world. You know,
that's probably why the venomous game is such a big joke here in the United States. It's because who the fuck's regulating anything, really? You know, and mind you, like everything that they have you do in Australia, like you just said for venomous, I think they need that should be for every keeper. Like 110%, and to do that much to keep something, oh my god, good luck. I don't, and it just all because it's that much of a risk. You know what I mean?
Jason, have you kept venomous?
I have, to be honest, I kept them momentarily to see if I wanted to get into them. You know, I had a friend that used to keep them. So admittedly, off license, they gave me an animal for a week just to see if I enjoyed the process of keeping it. And to be honest, as much as I loved the animals, and I do love some of those venomous snakes here, I just couldn't be bothered going through the paperwork process. And yeah, I like to handle my snakes, or at least know that I'm not going to be in danger if I get hit, you know, so... Yeah.
Jason, what are the common venomous snakes that people in Australia are keeping, like the venomous keepers? What are they working with mostly?
Look, I know red bellies are pretty popular because they're quite a pretty looking animal, but I think the thing I see most of advertised would be the death adders. Death adders are a very pretty little snake, but you know, the other thing as well is, and I'm definitely not trained or experienced in handling elapids, but they are a species that I've, you know, handled on a hook. They're kind of like a big worm, really. They're just a big, they're very heavy bodied, right? So there's something that is extremely dangerous, but I felt a bit more confident, you know, hooking an adder rather than something that's like just a wet noodle swinging around at you.
For
So,
sure.
but death adders are a pretty snake. They come in a lot of different nice color tones and palettes depending on where you are in Australia. So,
Dude,
and there's albino death adders, which are also very pretty as well. So they're a pretty species.
Alex Warren's, some of his prettiest snakes are venomous. They're fucking right, Alex? Can you name the species? What's the species of the venoms you keep?
The blue and Solaris. They're solid blue. Honestly, like they really are like the prettiest snake I own.
Yeah,
And
I've seen it on your channel.
They have like a bright red tail too, so it's super contrasting. It's awesome.
and you bred those, right, Alex? Am I tripping?
Yeah, they're the first things I ever bred.
That's pretty.
Yeah, no.
That's pretty sick. I'm not.
I know it's so weird, you know, to hear you guys have to go through this process, and I literally just found the guy on like Craigslist or something, and just drove to his house, and the guy had a tiger and 3 mountain lions, and
What?
yeah,
Just not,
like I mean here in Texas you can just do whatever.
yeah.
Wipers on Amazon or something.
Hey, I got to ask you, Jason. Okay, kind of, if we could kind of go back to you getting back into green tree pythons, were you doing any research or like tapping into the green tree python market like before you got back in? Like, I'm just curious what kind of homework you were doing or research you were doing before you got back into things.
Not a whole lot. So because I'd kept them previously, again, not for long, I hadn't bred them. You know, I've kept a lot of other species. You know, I do regularly tell people, and I think you say it a lot on the network, right? Green tree pythons, in my opinion, one of the easiest snakes to keep once you've got their enclosure and habitat dialed in, right? They're not a challenging snake. They feed less than the other animals. They eat smaller items than the other animals, which means less maintenance, less, well, okay, except for cleaning and stuff, but in less feeding and less all this stuff. I find them very easy to keep. So getting back in and wanting to keep them, admittedly, we just had a couple of kids. Well, they're 3 and 5 now, but I've got a couple of kids. And I was looking for something pretty that I could display and just have a nice pet. And I'm thinking, well, I'm not going to have room for a lot of snakes again. So I'm just going to keep it simple. And what do I want? I'll just get something that I find most appealing. And the 2 things that always come to mind for me were green tree pythons and rough scale pythons. Right? I love the roughies. Yeah. And I'm like, I'll get a couple of green tree pythons. So I reached out to Russell Grant. He's a well-known breeder here. He's probably been mentioned on the show a couple of times. He's down in Melbourne. He's known for breeding some really nice sarong type and Aussie green tree pythons. So I reached out to him and said, look, I want to get back into greens, and do you have anything available? And he did. He had a yearling pair available. He always keeps them for 12 months, lets them go through that color change, you know, to see how much dorsal white they're going to get on them and stuff, the Aussie. So I acquired a pair from him, and that was meant to be it, you know, just a pair of snakes. It's going to look pretty right here in my office. This is where I work most of the time. And it started off as a pair, and I think by the end of that year, I think I had 3 or 4 pairs. And it never slowed down. My wife still reminds me, she's like, you said you were just going to get 1. Yeah, that didn't stop at 1. Didn't stop at 10.
What pair is this right here that we're looking at?
That's the pair that produced for me last year. That was the first time breeding.
Nice.
Greens and first clutch. She's just, I think she's a day post ovulation there, but that's the pair. Female on the left, obviously, male on the right. So I managed to capture that picture. Again, luckily, my animals, usually you wouldn't see this window. This is where that full bank of enclosures was. And they're right next to me all day, every day. So I'm here to observe a lot. Yeah, I can see their interactions. I can see the behaviors, and I know when something's right or wrong, and, you know, I can tend to them quick. But that's the first pair I produced or was able to breed in my first.
Is that her ovulation?
Yeah, that is.
You said day 1 post ovulation, you said, right?
I think so. Like, look, I'm no expert on that. Like, I just saw her swollen and sitting a bit, you know, uncomfortably, as you could see. I'm like, oh, that's definitely ovulation. And I asked a couple of guys around here, and they're like, oh, it is either just before or just after, because the opinion was that she might be a bit bigger at the actual moment. But either way, like, it's clear that she wasn't that big the day before, to my knowledge. So I'm like, oh, she's swollen.
Not to get off topic, we want to know what really grinds my gears here, Jason. These are pure localities right here, right? I see pure Aussie pair, right? Now, where the fuck's Ryan Young? How come he doesn't say anything nice when we have what he loves on the screen? He only wants to chat whenever we have designers. We're looking at this is what you would call Ryan's dream pair right here, pure Aussie stuff. I'm just saying, bro. Some of my friends, I just can't do it anymore. I don't know, Bill. No, but I'm curious. This is pure Australian stuff right here, right? Like this is what when you guys say this is what we're talking about here.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Pure Aussies. To be honest, all I've got is Aussies, and to the best of my knowledge, pure. So that's all I've got at the moment.
So how did sarong type stuff get down there? I'm curious how you got some of the locality.
I think others may have kind of explained it. So once upon a time, we're talking maybe 20 years ago, green tree pythons were, again, we only keep the Aussies, right? In Australia, we can only keep Australian animals on license here, right? And as you know, not long ago, all green tree pythons were considered Morelia viridis. So technically, they're all the same species. We're meant to keep the Aussies. But what was happening maybe 20 years ago, maybe even more recently, that there was a lot of smuggling, back and forward as happens. There's a lot of exotics here, and no different than you guys have Australian species over there that was smuggled out. Things get smuggled in. So, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, perhaps, a lot of animals were getting smuggled in because it was a lucrative market. So we're talking where, I know you guys pay a few $100 for a biak, right? Yeah. In Australia, even back then, when you could theoretically buy it cheap in the US, they'd be worth $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 here. So you can imagine in terms of a lucrative, illegal smuggling market, there's some good coin to be made. So a lot of animals got brought in. There was a huge demand and there wasn't a lot of local supply, so a lot of animals were brought in. And then you ended up with everybody thinking, well, they're all the same species anyway. So, a locality mix is not any kind of hybridization or anything like that. It's just, they're Aussies. They're all green tree pythons. And that led to a lot of importation illegally. But technically, the trade of those animals here was not illegal. We are trading in Morelia viridis, and that's what they are. Right. And the method of acquisition by keepers, if I was to buy one technically from another breeder who produced them, that's completely legit. I'm just buying a Morelia viridis and I'm licensed to buy them on license. Right. So, but that led to a lot of mixing, of course, no different than over there, I suppose, prior to the designer label, there were just a lot of locality crosses. And what you'll find here is that I wouldn't say the majority, but a huge portion of the green tree pythons in Australia are just a locality mix, right? But during those times of importation, of course, there were things that were brought in that were, sarong type and biak type and kofiau type, for example, and some of those are still produced here. So, there's a couple of breeders producing some very nice locality type green tree pythons that, to I think the best of their knowledge and our knowledge down here, they're pure locality type. So that's how we end up with some of those different ones.
Is a breeder male of yours? I think I'm reading this correct. Is this the male?
Yeah, I think so. A little bit younger there, so you can see a little bit of that juvenile blue highlight still in there. But he'll have a crack this year, actually. That one.
I'm curious. I don't know if Ryan was the one who showed us this in the chats before, Bill, but does that white, can that get more extreme? Is there lines of this stuff where the white dots on the dorsal gets more crazier? Is that possible?
As in the brightness of the white or the quantity of the stripe?
The amount of white, the amount of white.
Yeah. So Russell, the guy who I got these from, these are far, I wouldn't say far, but they are definitely not the best he's produced. He's about, I think his Aussies are 4 or 5 generations now captive bred.
Wow.
And he is producing some that are, 95, 99% striped. In fact, Daniel Boswell has his female. If you look at that one, for example, that's one that Russell Grant produced. So Chondro Bos, and that female is practically striped head to tail. Some of the holdbacks from Russell are just perfect. But again, I think it's the same story, and I think everybody here looks at a lot of what everyone does over there and vice versa. But with the whites, the Aru type, the Maruki type, the Aussie type, it's just that strange scenario of you breed 2 really nice ones together, and who knows if you're going to get it, right? So,
are you going for a specific look?
Look, I'll be honest. I do like wild type look. I like everything. That's probably why I buy too many snakes at times. But for the Aussies, purity is something I'm very passionate about. And the more white, the better. One
Yeah.
thing I do like most in the Aussies, and I suppose the Maruki type, is that really nice single dot line, like the single scale line there. Because once you start getting a few white scales off to the side, it's sort of somewhere between that, it's starting to tend towards that Aru look, if that makes sense, like those small clusters. But so I do like the Aussies and the Marukis. Like in terms of wild type phenotypes, my favorite is the Aussies and the Rookies and the Sarongs. I love the blue, that blue dorsal.
Yeah. What's this one right here? Is this are we still looking at something that's more on the pure Aussie side, or is there a little bit of Sarong one in this one?
No, they're all Aussies. Everything I've got is Aussie at this stage. But you can see there that one, again, nice amount of whites. That was probably a year ago, I suppose, that photo. I don't even know. But again, it's either the same. Unless I see them in their enclosure, you could probably mix some of them up and I'd forget which one's which, right? Because they're all pretty damn similar. But I got 2 males and 2 females from Russell Grant. That all look very, very similar in their patterns and whatnot.
Is this your production right here? Is this what one of your hatchlings?
Yeah. So honestly, man, like you guys all know, you have done it, but that I've been keeping for a long time. But definitely the highlight or pinnacle of breeding python success I've had is getting that clutch. Like it was just it was amazing, unbelievable. Like I didn't have high expectations, like I'm like, all right, I know these things can be tricky and I know it's going to give me a challenge. Like and again, I've bred a few different species and I've had some good success with other things, but I know that every species has its little perks and I knew these guys were a bit challenging. So when I paired the pair, it was actually a trio, all right? I had a male and 2 females. And when I put the male with, I was kind of interchanging. I was using the 1 male with the 2 different females that year. And very quickly, I could see one of those females was not receptive. She didn't want a piece of that male, right? He'd follow her around, but she'd just continually avoid him. So, after a few weeks of trialing them together and introducing, I just kind of cut my losses because I'm like, you know what? She is not up for this. But the other female, she was almost pursuing him. Like she was completely receptive. She was very happy to have him in there. And as soon as I'd put him in, I'd get a lock pretty quick within, half an hour. So in the end, I kind of just thought, well, it'd be great to get 2 clutches, but I'm going to kind of put all my eggs in one basket. I'm going to give him more of a chance with the female that wants to hang around with him. Yeah. And I'm just not going to bother with the other girl. I kind of got the impression I was starting to stress her out. Because, in the middle of the day where they're typically perched up, maybe burying their head and just, resting, she was cruising when he was in there. It's like, she's not comfortable. So I end up just pulling him out of that enclosure. I didn't bother putting him back in after a few weeks. I just let her go through I do cycle my animals, which we'll probably touch on, but I just let it play out the cycle, right? And, I'll give her a run this year as well, hopefully, but we'll see.
I don't know. Good. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, so like in terms of success, I tried 2 females. I got half of them. I got 1 out of 2.
There you
and
go.
Then right, exactly.
Take it every time.
And then with that one, again, I was very confident that, that the reason I didn't get that second clutch, I genuinely think it was, I believe it's the female. The male clearly did his job because he did it with another girl and he was keen to do it with both, but one girl wasn't interested. So I got 1 of the 2 clutches. I got 12 eggs. Out of the 12 eggs, I got 10 hatchies. Out of the 10 hatchies, I'm very happy. All 10 are kicking along fantastically. We'll touch on, but I had a couple of prolapses and, the challenges that we can face. But, I was telling my missus even that I'm like, out of the 10 babies, I was happy for 10 from 12. And out of the 10, I'm like, I'll be happy if 8 make the distance, like maybe I'll lose a couple, but we're 6 months in and they're all feeding and growing like troopers. So.
I will say from experience, the good thing about getting kicked in the balls right away pretty aggressively, like you like any win that you can get. Like you're not really complaining, okay? And even when you get shit like this, unfortunately, oh man, try not to get PTSD, Alex. I know it's hard to look at, buddy.
I'm used to it by now.
Yeah,
no kidding.
Okay, obviously we were talking a little bit before the show got kicked off as far as prolapses. I had one finally do it for the 5th time, so I had no choice. Just because I just come on, let's be real. But let's talk about your experience with prolapses. This was from your clutch, your first clutch that you got, right?
Yep. I only had 1 clutch so far. You know what? I got it right here.
All
so
right.
I'm in the process of we're about to kick off a house renovation, so
Right.
I've had to completely relocate my collection. They said they were all here, they're not now. But
Wow.
this here is the animal that prolapsed. This is that animal.
Yeah.
So hopefully it comes through clear. But that's it there.
And how many prolapses? Just one?
2.
2 prolapses. Okay.
Well, technically 3, I guess you could say. So
Okay.
So what happened is I count the first one as one, or the first 2 as one. So
Yeah.
basically what happened is, obviously I discovered the prolapse, and then, you go about putting it back in. And that, this was about dinner time, right? So I sit down, I put it back in, and everything seemed all right. And I'm like, I go check on it half an hour later, and sure enough, it was back out again. And it was at that point I pulled the tape out, right? So the first time I put it back in, I was just letting it cruise through my hands for a few minutes, and it all seemed nice. The vent had completely closed up, and it was looking all nice and good. And I'm like, we'll see what happens. And sure enough, half an hour later, I come back, and it's back out. So then I get it back in the second time, and I taped it back up. And that tape came off in the water bowl maybe 24 hours later, and then it was okay. And in actual fact, I'll correct myself, that was it for this snake. It didn't happen again after that. I had another one have a much smaller prolapse.
So this one actually only had 2, not 3.
That's right. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
This one had 2.
And so I'm curious, how long did you wait? So once you got the prolapse back in, how long did you wait before you gave it another meal?
Yeah, well, so basically what I did is I took the perch out. I do what everyone agrees upon, I suppose, So I took the perch out. I took the perch out for a couple of days, and I think I fed it maybe 3 or 4 days. Well, okay, so here's the part that you'll be finding interesting. That prolapse, that snake had never had a feed.
Oh, wow.
Whoa.
That had not fed.
So this could have been a different type of prolapse, because this looks fucking gnarly. Like this looks like that looks, I don't know, Bill, you see like the extra part with the prolapse there? It almost looks like a hemipene, but it's not. Like it's a lot. Like that's a big one right there for a neonate, for a fresh neonate.
Well, it had its first shed. This was probably 2 weeks after. So I had tried feeding it. It's not that I wasn't trying to feed. It's just that it had its shed, and I attempted a couple of feeding, trials and stuff. No success at that point in time anyway. And I was shocked, because I had a couple of others that had a feed. Yeah. Right. So I was checking every day. Again, first time green breeder. I'm literally checking their vents every day, right? Holding the tubs, check, everything's good. No bums hanging out. And when I found that one, I was actually really surprised, because I'm like, what the hell is this? You haven't even had a feed, right? What the hell are you trying to push out, right? And maybe I thought, well, they still get their eggs, the egg sac and stuff, and maybe it was just trying to pass some of that. I don't know, but
listen. I've had more than my fair share of prolapses, but never in a baby that's never taken a meal.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, it surprised me a lot, because I hadn't heard of it, right? I didn't know if others had experienced it. I definitely hadn't experienced it, and it was news to me.
Yeah,
but it took food. It took food the week after, so it just kicked off from there.
And what are you feeding, Jason? What are you feeding your neonates? First meal?
Pinkies, so straight onto day-old pinky mice.
Yeah.
I started after the first feed, and I wish I'd done it soon. I started injecting the pinkies with water, right? Because obviously, hydration is a big thing, and I've heard from a few different guys down here that have great success with that. And look, I had a couple take their first feed, no problems, and everything was fine. I had no reason for concern. But I honestly, when I started putting a bit of water in, I'm talking about 1/2 ml, right? So I'd use I've got one here. I just use literally just like an insulin syringe, right? So you can inject insulin with it. So I just bought a bag off Amazon, and I bought 1/2 ml straight up the into the pinky, which basically just turned it into like a little water balloon. And I don't know, I genuinely felt like their behavior changed, right? They just seemed more alert, more active. I haven't stopped, put it that way. Look, I'll be honest, and I know some don't agree, that I inject all my adults animals with water as well.
Yeah, I think Adam, I did a show with Adam on his podcast, and he was bringing this up. and it made sense with the adults, like the bigger preys. But I was wondering how the fuck you're getting away with it with the pinkies without them exploding. I mean, I've had some nasty fucking raps before. They're not exploding even with you injecting with water.
No. So these are a needle. So I was originally going straight down the throat.
Yeah.
Right. So just just stick it straight down the throat of the pinky and just straight into the guts, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Now that they're on fuzzies, I'm kind of going the other way. So
up the butt
of the pink, up the butt of the fuzzy. Yeah, and that's working because the needle's not long enough to get down into the guts. Basically, I think I was just kind of filling where the lungs are, and if they hit it hard, it would just kind of all squirt back out. So a little bit of trial and error, but look, I'll be honest, it's what I do, and I like it. It gives me a bit of peace of mind. You know, I still spray them, and I still change their water bowl every couple of days for the babies, and I still do the norm. But I just feel like, well, you know, there's no harm in doing it, in my opinion.
Alex, do you think what I'm thinking? Are you gonna order syringes? Hey, because listen, you and I both have to figure out this prolapse thing. Like we are on a fucking crazy run with this prolapse, and I'm willing to try anything. Like if I got to fucking inject a pinky with goddamn water to see if it stopped prolapsing, I'm okay with that. Are you?
Well, let me ask. So you said you've had 2 prolapses, right, Jason?
Yeah.
Was the second one after you've been feeding it these water injected pinkies?
I haven't had a single prolapse since then. Interestingly, also, yeah, I know we hear about, you know, different substrates and adults and everything having bad sheds and hydration issues and humidity issues and that. I've been injecting my adults since day one, right? So as in, you know, I feed, you know, like a something bigger than adult mouse, so like a hopper rat type thing for my adult, you know, we're talking about this big. And I will put 6 to 8 mils at least of fresh water in the gut of that rodent. And I have never in 4 years, I haven't had a single bad shed on a single adult. And I don't need to spray anything if I didn't want to. They're well and truly hydrated. In fact, when my female dropped her clutch last year, again, first clutch, rather than worry about getting meat back on her bones, because I fully cycle them, right? Temperature, humidity, light cycle, everything, right? I go through that cycle. I've just done it with all my different species. And so when she had her eggs, the first thing I did was I got fuzzy rats, right? So we're talking small. I didn't want to strain her by giving her something too big. I just got fuzzy rats and I put nearly 10 mils of water in that thing. It was like a bloody water balloon. And my first concern was making sure she was very sufficiently hydrated.
Jason,
the meat I can get back on the bones, right? But I can't guarantee she's going to sit there and drink as much water out of a water bowl that I would be comfortable with. So,
Jason, when you're feeding the adults and even when you're feeding the neos, are you drenching the prey item in water in addition to injecting them, or they're dry and you're injecting them?
Both.
Double soak. Damn, that's
soaking wet. Yeah. So, well, I wouldn't say they're as dripping wet as they're not coming straight out of the bucket. I take them out of the bucket and I put them on a towel, not to dry them, but just to take them out so I can inject the water.
Oh,
so the water for the adults, I'm actually using a different needle. This is an ink cartridge syringe. You buy these online to inject, you know, the old ink printers. You could buy the bottle of ink and inject it into the cartridge to top up your printer. That's what I use here. So the ball width on the end of this tip here, on the end of it, is like nearly 1.5 millimeters, and it's very long. So I can get this down into the gut of the rodent, and that's a 10 mil syringe. So I'm putting everything into breeding season. Well, you know, winter now, right? Like I just gave my last feed about a week or two ago, and I've started to drop my temperatures for the cycle. And the last 4 feeds my females got were a small feed. Each rodent had 10 mils of water in it. So I can guarantee my snakes had 40 mils of water during the month of April, ahead of, you know, a prolonged period of essentially no food and reduced temperatures.
Okay. I have one more question about your babies. I know you're probably doing it in Celsius, but what temperatures are you keeping them at? And are you doing a night drop?
Babies, I'm not. It's 30 degrees Celsius, which is I brought my phone so I can actually do the conversion, right? So I'm running 30 degrees, which is 86 Fahrenheit on the tubs. And the probe, so on my rack that I've got just here, I've got it's 24 tubs, not that they're all full, but 24 tubs. I've got one tub up the top set up exactly as per all of the other ones. There's no animal in it, and the same perching and everything in there. And I've zip tied the thermostat probe to exactly the ideal warm perching spot for the animal. So it's that perch position that's 30 degrees or 86 Fahrenheit. Admittedly, the floor temperature would probably be closer to 100, right? Because as I said, I'm measuring where they're going to be. They're not going to go to, if I get the floor to be that, 86 degrees Fahrenheit or 30 degrees, if that's 30, the perch is going to be a lot less.
Way too cool.
Right. Yeah. So I'm measuring exactly where I ideally want them to perch, the hot spot. And that tub doesn't get opened. It doesn't get touched. Right. So it's very stable. And then obviously all the tubs are exactly the same, sitting on the same rack. So they're 30 degrees, no nighttime drop at all.
You're using belly heat. Belly heat then.
Belly heat, my cords are underneath the tubs.
Okay, interesting, because like all of my babies have back heat.
Yeah.
So obviously a little bit different. You have to adjust things a little bit differently.
Yeah, I feel belly heat's a lot more trickier. I think the back heat, the wall heat, from what I experience, has been a lot more like, okay, I found the right temp, I'm good. Belly heat fluctuates for me, at least. It's been like it's been kind of like hard for me to have, but mind you, I don't put baby. I have the belly heat stuff I have for my subadults and like my holdbacks, stuff that are eating really well. I have on belly heat. They're 15 quart tubs, but the 6 quart tubs all have the back heat.
Yeah, my setup's exactly the same, and I agree. It's probably a little bit trickier belly heat on a small like shoebox type tub, but yeah, you're right. If you're looking for perch temperatures to be in the 80s, then that belly, that bottom of the tub temperature is going to be 100 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting. The feedback's good because I need a new rack because as they're getting a bit bigger, I want to up the tub size. Yeah. And I'm always debating, back heat versus belly heat. Belly heat has been the staple for me for 2 decades with racks and tubs and things, because a lot of the species I've kept as well, even this rack here, they're all Enteresia, all different spotted pythons and things like that. They're a ground dwelling snake, so we just all naturally heat the bottom. But yeah, the greens are a bit different, so I'm kind of on the fence. I haven't yet made my decision.
I will say, Jason, like MJ said, once my babies get moved up to like the next size, 15 quart, where that might be, that's all belly heat there. Yeah. So again, I wouldn't, if you're having success doing what you're doing, I wouldn't try to get better out of what's working well.
We all know that the first few months of this neonate, like the temps need to be so goddamn consistent. You know what I mean? And it's really hard to get those consistent temps in a bigger tub first and foremost, and with the heat on the ground. But then, like Bill said, once they get to the point of establishment, fucking belly, side heat doesn't fucking matter. They're good at that point. I've had 2 snakes I got from Bill that have gone straight into my rack where I have belly heat. Never had an issue at all whatsoever. But it's just like it's just that those first stages, right? You want this thing to be a fucking eating maniac, and when you have it in something more control and smaller, you know what I mean, with something consistent temps wise, that's on your side with establishing a neonate, I feel like.
Yeah. So with the adults, I use panels, and I use an on-off thermostat, and I can adjust the fluctuation in the temperatures. And I'm actually more than happy for it to have a good 1 or 2 degree temperature swing every hour or so, because I think it's very natural, right? So I'm not scared of that. I know that the average temp's going to be about 20 to 30 degrees Celsius, and I think that's a healthy temp. And I think it's healthy to have that slight fluctuation, by a couple of degrees throughout the day as the temperature regulates. Yeah. But for the hatchy racks, I always use pulse proportional stats. They're pretty precise, right? I get bugger all fluctuation at all. It just keeps it extremely consistent. And I'm sure just pulsating, it just keeps the heating element very, very accurate for me. So I do use that for that stability purpose. As I said, they're stable. They're 24/7 heat. There's no different temperature cycles than that. But of course, once they become, I guess, sub-adult, I did start dropping the temperatures. I give them a nighttime drop. So during the day, the adults, for example, are at about their basking or their hot spot, pretty much the whole tub, really, when you think about it, the whole enclosure. It's about 30 degrees under the panel, right? So 29.5 to 30, what's that, 86 Fahrenheit is kind of the hottest part of the enclosure. There's not much gradient, right? All my enclosures are 2 by 3 by 2 foot, so 36 by 24 by 24 inches. Same as yours, MJs. That's what I like to keep everything in as adults. And you know what it's like. You don't get a huge gradient, right? Maybe a couple of degrees if you're lucky during the day. And that's why I do put in a night drop. So at night, I drop them down to about 80 Fahrenheit for night. So it gives them a bit of a bump during the day, a bit of a night time. And you know, their behavior is extremely predictable. Like,
so hold on. At nighttime, that the basking's at 80.
Yeah, in the adult adult enclosures, I give them a night drop.
That's nighttime. And then what is it on the cooler side? Are you? I'm just curious what the coldest it's getting in that enclosure.
Yeah, probably like 78. It won't be much. It's not as much gradient as I'd like.
Yeah, it seems a little warm. What's your room getting at night? I'm just curious what your room's at night. The ambient.
At the moment, at the moment, because we're going into winter, right? So at the moment, it's getting down to at least 60.
Your room, the reptile room itself gets down to 60.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's why you have 80. That makes sense. That's good.
Yeah.
Cool. Holy shit. But I know they can handle it too. Shout out to Lee. I don't know if you know who Lee is. Millennial something. I forget. He's from the UK, but he's put some videos out of him out there looking at chondros in the wild. And dude, yeah, it drops down. It definitely gets cold out there. But dude, that's crazy, huh, Bill? So 80. I don't know how I would work that. What now is there?
No, I think it's fine. I'm just surprised that if his ambient's 60 and his heat panel's at 80, that there should be a pretty big gradient there. You know,
I'll be honest. I don't have as much ventilation as I'd like on my enclosures. You know what it's like. Right? Dialing in those enclosures, there's so many factors. Yeah, and if it's a balance between, you know, more ventilation, better airflow, and probably more gradient, but then I'm going to have the humidity issues. Now, it's just a matter of, you know, they're the enclosures I've got. Like, they're the ones that I've got made up. That's the ventilation that I've got, and that's what I'm working with.
Yeah.
You know, if I was to do it all over again, I probably would have got double the amount of ventilation, and then I would have just simply taped up some ventilation on the outside at the back, for example, to just regulate it. But at the moment, I don't have, you know, I've got 2 air vents in the back, but I actually would probably have preferred 4. Just to have a bit more circulation. I
think if your room itself is getting somewhat of an air circulation, I don't think you need all this crazy ventilation in the caging. I think a few slots are good. But for instance, one thing that I figured out a year ago and why I was getting all this fucking terrible dry stuck shed is these focus cube habitats have 10 slots on the wall, like 5 on each side. And I had those fucking, they were just wide open all the time. And then mind you, my ambient humidity was like, I just didn't care to keep up with it. I was trying my best to keep it, but I had no humidifiers in here. And no matter how much I was spraying in the fucking goddamn enclosure, all the ventilation was just sucking that shit out. So it just got an overkill with spraying, and I was still getting stuck sheds. But once I made the ambient humidity a lot better, and I fucking covered up half those vents, dude, I don't even look at stuck sheds anymore. I don't have them at all. I don't.
Well, it sounds like Jason's adults are dialed in. You know, I mean, he's figured it out. He's having good sheds. He's having good breeding activity. Not having prolapses. Things are eating. I mean, you know, enough's enough.
Yeah. I'd be scared to tinker with it, to be honest, because it might not work for everyone, but it's working, right? Like, it's a pretty standard looking setup for the most part. But yeah, look, if I could just have everything I dream of, I'd say it'd be nice to have more airflow, but maintain humidity and have a better gradient. But you know, that's a hard balance, right? Like, it's just hard to get, you know, it's not like you're going to get those, you know, rainforest conditions of just nice airflow, but maintaining humidity and gradient, they can escape heat. You know, in a 36 by 24 box, it's not an easy, you know, it's just not an easy task, but it's working. And as I said, even now, I put some new thermometers in the other day. I think it's the one we all use. I can't remember the name, but the one with the thermometer and hydrometer digital readout from Amazon.
Like a Govee or something?
That's it, Govee. Yeah, they're the ones. So I've got that in every enclosure.
Nice.
And yeah, I was happy, as I said, at the perching height under the panel right there. I'm getting about 29.5 degrees Celsius. That's that 86 Fahrenheit. And I'm not measuring the other end because it doesn't really matter. I'm not going to be able to adjust it, if that makes sense, right? Unless I was to add more ventilation. And then I go back to square one with battling potentially humidity situations. I do mist them. The adults get misted every 2 to 3 days, and I give the enclosure a bit of a wet down, and that gives me a bump in humidity up to about 90% humidity. And that usually, after about 24 hours, that's sitting back at around 60, and I leave it there for a couple of days. So I give them that fluctuation in humidity.
What's your substrate, Jason, in your adult cages?
The coconut husk bark stuff that MJ just stopped using. I was surprised the other day. I was listening. I'm like, oh, what? He's not using it. It's working great for me.
Hey, if it's working great, it's working great.
Yeah.
But I will agree. It happened last night. I got a photo of it. Yeah, some of those girls at night during feeding, they're just getting mouthfuls of bark because they're stupid, right?
I mean, that's why it's like no matter what substrate you use, if there's anything,
they're gonna hit it.
If it's anything on the floor, they can catch it. It doesn't matter. And I will say, I've had taken 3-4 puppy pads out of a snake's mouth before, but there's been times where you don't catch the cocoa chip, and I don't want my snake swallowing that cocoa chip. That's I've heard stories of people losing snakes with that shit getting gnawed into their stomach and stuff like that. But also, that's not why I switched. I mean, I switched because I don't have a humidity problem no more. The only reason why I went to cocoa chip was because of my humidity. But dude, mind you, cocoa chip was making me a lazy keeper. What I mean by that is your cocoa chip, if you're spot cleaning, you're cleaning that cocoa chip every 3-4 months, and you're not really concerned about looking when you have a fucking goddamn puppy pad and you obviously see a shit there, and you're and then Bill said, a lot of times you don't see the residue that a fucking fat shit leaves. It liquefies and spreads out, and there's times where that puppy pad is black and disgusting from a shit, and you're oh my god. And so there was times where I'm not catching that on cocoa chip. And mind you, when you have this much going on, you're just going, and I just remember smelling something I didn't want to smell, and I'm fuck this shit. I want to go cleaner with my chondros. That's the only reason why I did it, and mainly because I don't have humidity issues no more. So,
well, I keep a bunch of ball pythons on cocoa chip.
Yes, and I keep my ball pythons on cocoa chip. I do, yes.
And I will tell you the times that I pull open that tub and I miss a shit. It's there, but it blends in. And how long has it been there? And I haven't seen it. And then, like MJ said, even when they aren't having a total solid shit, they're still emitting this substance that if you don't know, if you're not using puppy pads, you wouldn't even know it's there. But if you're using puppy pads, you'll come out in a few days. It's just brown. It's not there's not a shit, but it's just brown from their secretions. And you go, I got to take the puppy pad out. It needs a new puppy pad. It needs a clean puppy pad. And if you're using the cocoa chip, you don't see that.
And I had pots on the ground, man. You don't even want to know. When I actually gutted out all the cocoa chip, man, I was finding shits attached to the pot those plants, and I'm like, what the fuck? It was just I don't want that. I worked too hard to have the collection I have. Why am I gonna fucking And it wasn't on purpose. It was just I have a wall of 16 of these, and as I'm moving, like Bill said, you don't catch, even though you're maybe trying to look, you're not going to catch every turd. And next thing you know, it's been 4 months and that turd's still there. It's I'm good. And then the smell too. After a while, the cocoa chip that absorbs all this fucking piss and stuff, it starts to smell. It starts to reek a little bit.
One time I found mushrooms growing out of my cocoa chips.
Are you sure that was the cocoa chip, Alex? I'm just kidding.
What'd you do with those mushrooms, Alex?
Yeah, what'd you do? What'd you do next?
I dried them out, Put
them on a peanut butter sandwich.
Yeah, exactly.
So I agree with you guys 100% on that. There's definitely some huge hygienic benefits of the, puppy pads or paper or whatever you want to use. I do like the aesthetics of the setup. So
me too. I like the looks. I love the look.
My enclosures are very sterile. I try to get that balance between that sterile, easy to clean. Plastic perches, there's plastic pans. Yeah. There is the bark. But you know, I try to keep it as aesthetically pleasing as possible while still providing cover and something. So what I've been doing with the bark, and it's working, because you're absolutely right. When they do a shit, man, that stuff can spread. It goes to the bottom, it spreads out on the floor. So what I've been doing is I use an entire bag in one enclosure, which means I'm getting like a good 4-inch bed of the cocoa bark. And the reason I do that is because when I spot clean, I take a lot out.
Yeah.
Right? Like I'll take a massive handful of that shit out and put it in, and then I expose the floor underneath it, and then I just use a bit of disinfectant and clean that spot. Right. So to the best of my ability, I'm just spot cleaning, you know, trying to spot clean at that next level.
What's your Chondro doing this whole time? Or is it just staring at you like ready to light you up?
Yeah.
Or take it out?
No. Well, I never go in there at night. I'm never opening those things at night. They're just, you walk past the enclosure and you just bang, bang, bang.
This was like a few months ago. Me and Bill were talking about how like there'll be some females. I think during cycling, like when you take them off food and put them back on, they don't give a fuck if you spray them directly in the eyes. They're like right there, ready to light you up. They just want to eat, and it's like, dude, go away. You know what I mean? And so I missed about the puppy pads. It's so easy just to fucking wrap that up. And just stay out of their way. You know what I mean? Because I just want to stay the fuck out of their way sometimes.
You know,
I understand.
I was thinking when Jason was talking about, you know, his temperature monitoring with Govies, it's amazing now with Amazon and the worldwide, you know, we are all able to be on relatively the same page, you know, is how we're keeping these things. You can get the same puppy pads that I get. You can get the same temperature monitoring, you know, units that I have, and it's really quite convenient that halfway across the world we can compare husbandry, you know, apples to apples.
Yeah, exactly. I also run every single enclosure on its own thermostat as well.
Yeah, you have to. Oh my god.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's not. It's. I think these days, you know, you can get some decent thermostats at reasonably good prices, and you should value them, the animal, enough that, you know, having a good setup. I think just having them, because you know, right, the top enclosures get warmer than the middle enclosures, which get hotter than the bottom enclosures, and if you're running one stat, your temps are everywhere. So I dial in everything individually.
This one gets different than this one right next to it. Like they're just this wall right here, like it's all different, and you'll know that when they all have individually their own probe. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
exactly. Jason, what brand thermostat are you using?
Cheapies. I use the Inkbirds.
I knew it. Hey, listen, there's some diehard loyal Inkbird users out there. Let's just say I had one that like fried out, and I put a story, and I was like, dude, what the fuck? I had all these people. I've been using Inkbird for 10 years. You know, they said it was
even herp stats go out. Like even herp stats
fuses. But it's also, you know what? You have a good point. I had a Herpstat 6 that I had to replace the fuses. Spent a lot of money on that Herpstat 6, and it's still fucking not working right. So I don't know what I guess there's no perfect fucking thing out there.
Listen, I have no economic ties to Herpstat, but I'll tell you that just last week I had a Herpstat 4 that the control panel on the front just quit working. Like, you know, I would hit the menu button, it wouldn't work.
Damn.
Well, I messaged them, you know, Dion is the guy that owns Spider Robotics. I messaged him and said, send it to me. I'll replace the front panel, no problem. Sent it to him. He replaced it, didn't charge me a penny to ship it back or replace that front panel. I mean, listen, the customer service at Herpstat's just unbelievable. If you're having trouble with your unit, MJ, send it to Dion. Tell him you're having trouble with it. He'll fix that thing and send it back at absolutely no charge.
Yeah, he advised that, you know, replace the fuses, and I did, and then now I'm still having issues. So yeah, you're right. He's really awesome. That guy's really nice.
Dude, put it in a box and send it to him, and he will fix it. I guarantee you, he'll fix it and he'll send it back, and he probably won't charge you. He's never charged me a thing. They have the probe replacement program where if a probe goes out, probe stops functioning, put it in the mail. Doesn't charge you a cent. Sends you a brand new probe.
Cool. Awesome. I will do that. You guys spent a lot of money. These Herpstats, man, like mind you, the way I had to get my Herpstats was because I tried going cheap at first, learned a hard lesson, and I had to buy all my Herpstats at once. Wasn't cheap. That was an expensive month. I'll tell you that right.
But I'm telling you, they'll last forever. and they'll warranty, and then their customer service is great. So that's just my 2 cents on herb stats.
Yeah, and I will say this: the Herbstat 6 that was giving me the fuse issue or whatever was one I actually bought pre-owned. It wasn't even a brand new one. So I think this one's been around for a while too. So mind you, all the other Herbstats that I have, no issues at all. They're fucking great. But yeah, man, it's just like Herbstats is the Herbstats are something. The thermostats are something not to ignore when you're building a collection.
Absolutely. You don't want to skimp on your herb stats. You don't want to skimp on your incubator. You don't want to skimp on your monitoring. I mean, these animals, not only are they, they're worth, because we obviously, we love the animals and we want the best for them, but they're also an economic consideration. And if you've got an animal that's worth several $1,000s, why would you not spend a few hundred, on the best husbandry things that you can get, whether it's the cage, it's the thermostat, it's the monitoring device, it's the heating element. Just get the best that you can absolutely get for these animals.
Yeah. Because a lot of this shit could be prevented. Like, as far as like, disasters that could happen when running just one thermostat on like 10 cages and stuff like that. Like, it's just, you care about this animal, like Bill said, but we have to do our part by eliminating risk, and that is having every animal on its own thermostat, 110%.
No doubt.
Yeah.
The other thing, so with the hatches and the incubators, I don't use Inkbird. I use the what do you call them? Habistats. Do you have Habistat over there as well? I assume you would. Habistat, Microclimate are two of the other brands that used to be around here. So they're the Habistats are the ones I use for the pulse proportional. So I use them for the incubators. I use them for the racks because I can dial them in really, really precisely. The Inkbirds give me obviously that little bit of fluctuation, but they work the way I like. The other thing is that everything is obviously dialed in. I control everything just from my phone, which is obviously convenient. I can have it all there. But I also keep spares. Like I've always got a couple of spare thermostats here. The other thing I do as well, I say do, but I recently did when I had to relocate the collection ahead of the reno, was I put all of the stats obviously go into a power board and into the sockets and whatnot. And I've got them on smart switches. So if at any time the temperatures exceed, so basically like a safety fail, right? If at any point the enclosures get too hot or the room gets too hot, the actual power point will switch off and just shut down all of the stats. Yeah. And you can pick that stuff up cheap anywhere, right? Like any of your local hardware and Amazon, just as that kind of, second backup, so it's like if something fails and I'm getting a notification to say I've got failing temperatures or it's too hot or too cold, I can switch it off remotely. If that fails, the actual power point will switch off.
What about your power source, like your electricity source? Is that very reliable, or do you often find yourselves like the power goes out in your house?
No, I never have that happen.
You've never had that happen?
No, not like that. Would usually be a planned outage, or some electrical thunderstorm and something brought down a power line or something somewhere.
It goes out for a short amount of time.
Yeah, a few hours, and then the electricity companies will get everything back up and running. But I don't have any power supply issues there.
I can tell you in Texas that is not the case. We have oftentimes of disrupted power. So my point was, do you have a generator available? Do you feel like you need a generator available for the?
No, I'm not concerned. Oh, I was concerned ahead of the renovation. We're about this house is going to turn into Swiss cheese in about 2 weeks. So everything had to get relocated. And part of that is the whole air conditioning system's got to go, and power will be on and off a lot more regularly. So I had to relocate the animals. So it's going to be an interesting season given I've just relocated everything. But power supply is not a concern.
You're probably not as concerned because those animals are from where you live.
Yeah, you're native.
Yeah. So they're kind of used to those conditions, aren't they?
Sort of.
To an extent.
So down in Sydney, we are like
colder, I think, over there.
Like 2,000 miles from their locality. Like I'm in Sydney, right? So we're a lot further south than the Iron Range, like a lot further south. It would take me 3 days to drive to the Iron Ranges.
So, okay, why don't you give us the difference in temperature then? Like, tell us what it is, the coldest up
so
compared to you.
So I've never been to the Iron Ranges. Unfortunately, I'd love to go see them in their natural habitat, but I would expect that because you're talking, you know, the density and the humidity, the rainfall, the seasons up in the Iron Range probably offers them more stability than what outside here does. So at the moment, we're not at winter, right? But during the months of winter here, it doesn't get below freezing. Very rarely it would. But like during the night time, it'll get down to about 40 degrees Fahrenheit outside during winter. And ironically, or not ironically, my diamond pythons love it. Actually, that's when I see them active. They're just, even this morning, outside this morning, for example, it was 55 Fahrenheit outside, 13 degrees in the area. Sure enough, 7 o'clock, look outside. The diamonds are all outside. They're happy as. As soon as the sun comes out, they're back hiding again. It's like they love it. They love the cold, and yet they love the stinking hot. They're interesting. But outside, 55 Fahrenheit during the day at the moment, and then that's at night. During the day, it's about 22, 23, so that's the low 70s. That's where we are now. During the month of winter, though, we'll be probably looking at about 60 to 65 would be a daytime temperature outside Fahrenheit. So 16, 17 degrees, for example. Sometimes a lot colder.
Jason, are the diamond pythons the only thing that you keep outside? MJ mentioned before we came on that you keep your animals outside.
Yeah, check that out. Look at that enclosure. That's so.
This is the diamond. Yeah, that's the diamond enclosure I recently built. So just the diamonds. So I'm in Sydney, right? So diamonds are native to the area. Like you can find them in and around Sydney, no worries. A little bit, you know, a couple of 100 kilometers north and south and west of Sydney, you'll find diamond pythons. So they're native to the area. So they love it out there. I recently built that. That, funny enough, is a chicken coop.
Yeah,
and
it works.
I bought it because it said it's snake proof. I'm like, well, if it can keep them out, it can keep them in.
They can't get in, they can't get out.
That was my logic. And I sent pictures of this to the chicken coop company. I think they're a bit surprised because they're promoting this to say, oh, this will keep those nasty, pesky, bloody chicken-eating, you know, monsters out. And I'm like, it keeps them in too. So that's fully planted now. I got a bunch of plants, aquatic plants. There's a fountain with the solar panel on it and stuff. So I really like that. As I said, my first memory of snakes was diamonds, like in captivity. So it's kind of a nostalgic thing to have there. And I like just watching them. They're very different, right? Diamonds, yeah, I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent, but as diamonds, yeah, they love the cold. Like their behavior is different than the greens, than the roughies, than whatever else I keep. They are a bit unique in their own way, even as far as carpets go.
So are you keeping the diamonds outside year round?
Yep. Yeah, they're out there now. Like I say, even now, it's what? 60 Fahrenheit. Last night, as I said, was in the 50s Fahrenheit. And I woke up this morning and looked outside and they're up cruising around on those perches and logs.
Dude, there's
no supplemental heat in that outside enclosure,
nothing.
Right? That's crazy.
Nothing at all. So awesome. I do have, again, this was just prior to putting them in, right? So they're now, I've got a pair out there. And I do, in the back left corner, I have a what we call an esky or a foam box, a cooler box, whatever you want to call it. But that's in the back left corner. I've got two on top of each other. And in that, I've just put some straw substrate they can get in underneath that. But no, there's nothing supplemental in there at all.
And have you produced diamond pythons out of that enclosure?
Never. Not yet. Like they've just gone out. So I could this season. The temperatures will be okay. I'm very confident it'll be fine. There's a lot of guys keeping diamonds out here in Sydney anyway. And, you know, for the most part, most don't offer supplemental heat. You know, some might have, you know, some will bury a hide box, you know, so you're getting the warmth of the soil a little bit lower. Yeah. And, but mine, what I've done is I've used a black box. So, you know, even when it gets a little bit of heat, it just absorbs the heat a little bit more and it insulates quite well. So it'll be a little bit warmer than what it would be.
That's so
air
cool.
temperature.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's that's incredible. I love that setup.
I love it when somebody could keep something outside because I mean I know just from keeping lace monitors, like I do know these reptiles could appreciate fucking fresh air from outside. Like they act different. Sure. You know what I mean? And but you know, mind you, like a lot of stuff's not native to where I live. I mean, I don't know what is native, and nothing's native in this room. So in a sense, like that's why I feel like control temps is the ideal way with with what I keep. But like, for instance, Brandon Wheeler, who's not far from me, like 40 minutes north, you know, he keeps diamond pythons outside, has successfully bred them outside. And I'm just like, I would love that someday. You know what I mean? But mind you, like, no matter what I want to keep outside, at some point I have to bring something in. I don't, unless it's diamonds. Like, I feel like diamonds are obviously, or bull and eye or something like that, can handle the lower temps during winter. But you know,
but MJ, it probably gets too hot. It would get too hot where you are, right, during the summer.
I mean, not if there's, you know, shade, provided shade or something like that. Like, I would have to do something to give them something where they could cool down. But yeah, if I have a cage like what he had, Bill, all exposed, as far as like the meshing like that, it would be too hot, I feel like. And it would get too cold, I feel like, too. So but you know, I don't know. I just love it. That's why I like, you know, people like Ron St. Pierre, people in Florida who fucking have really cool outdoor enclosures. Just a dream of mine someday. I don't know if it'll be here in San Diego, but I think it's fucking cool that you could do that. I really do.
Yeah, that's the main reason I keep diamonds. Like, I love them as a species. I think they're an awesome animal. But you know, the only other species I've ever kept outside was the lace monitors, and I had a big custom enclosure, is a lot bigger than that one, and they successfully bred for me outside too. No supplemental heat, and you know, when you put them in that natural setup, they just do their thing, right? Like, even the diamonds, their behavior changed straight away, and not in terms of aggressive, just the way they come out in the cold and the way that they seek heat when they want it, and that their behaviors change. You know, I put her out there, and on a hot day, it was about 40 degrees when she first went out there. And within a couple of hours, she was fully submerged with just her head sticking out of the pond. And she sat there for hours and hours and hours.
She was under the water. Oh, wow.
Yeah, fully in the pond. It was like about 150 liters. I don't know what that is over there for you guys, but it's a big pond. All right. And she was fully submerged with just the head sticking out on the rock.
Wow.
And she was super happy. So I just love watching them in their habitat. Like, I anticipate I'll get a clutch out of them. If not this year, maybe next year. Like, they're in their environment out there. But it's not a priority. Like, if they breed, they breed. They're just a beautiful snake. And I think it's likely I'll get a clutch eventually, but there's not going to be any effort on my part, if that makes sense. Like, it's just, I don't need to cycle them. I don't need to do anything. I've stopped feeding them because it's getting a bit cold for that.
Yeah. And since we're on the topic of that, like, what are your, what has worked for you cycling wise? Like, I know you do a temp drop and stuff like that, but we didn't talk much about feeding. Like, what size prey items do you feel comfortable feeding your adult chondros and whatnot? And if we could get on that topic.
Yeah. So the hatchies I'm feeding every week, they're on fuzzies. The adults, well, once they hit probably 12 months to 2 years, I start backing them off to fortnightly feed every 2 weeks. And at the moment, I feed the adults in the summer months. So during winter, I cycle. That's where I take them off food. But during the warmer months, I'm giving them a feed I'd say every 2 to 3 weeks. I don't really monitor it too much because they're always looking hungry, right? They're always ready to light you up. You feed them a rat and they're there 5 minutes later, ready to go again. Yeah. But so every 2 to 3 weeks, I'll give them a feed, unless they're in shed. Because again, you know, if they're in shed, they don't come down. So I've got 2 perches. They'll always come down to the bottom right corner under the heat panel on the lowest perch when they want food. The whole group of them.
Interesting.
And so what I do, if they stay up in the top corner, they're going into shed, like without even seeing any opaqueness or any of that. They're going to shed. There's a reason they're not coming down. They're not in that hunting mode. But I feed every 2 to 3 weeks, and I'm giving them a hopper rat, hopper to weaner size, so about the size of an adult mouse, maybe twice the size, depending on the time of year, depending on if I haven't fed them for a few weeks or a month, you know. So that kind of size. As I said, everything gets injected between 6 to 10 mils of fresh water. Just gives me that confidence. I haven't had any stuck sheds. I haven't had not a single, actually never a single problem with adult shedding at all. And then, so I do that for the non-cooler months, right? So we're talking, so I'll put it this way. I've stopped feeding now. The last feed was the end of April. And I will not feed them until they either give me a clutch or they're not going to give me a clutch. So they'll go off food now for at least 4 to 6 months. Wow. So I'll give them. So I fed them at the end of April, and then last night actually I started reducing their temperatures just by 1 degree Celsius during the day. 1 degree Celsius drop at night, and I reduce their photo period from 12 hours of heat and light to 11.5 hours of heat and light. So I'll bring that down incrementally by about 30 minutes. So every week for the next 4 weeks or so, I'll drop 1 degree Celsius and half an hour. And then in the end, so this is just what I did last year at work. So I'm just going to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And I got down to, instead of 29.5 during the day, it was probably around the 27.5. And then during the night, instead of being 25, 26 during the day, it was closer to 20 degrees during the night. And 20 degrees is what we're looking at for about 70 Fahrenheit at night.
Very
and
similar.
that will be,
Yep.
yeah, and that'll be 14 hours of that temperature and the 10 hours of the light and that reduced heat during the day. And by the end of May, which obviously we're in, so come June is when I'll start putting them together. Now, what I already see within the first temperature decrease, what I see very quickly is the behavior starts to change. I see them stop going to the hunting, the hunting perch. I see them stop going to the ambush as much. They will over the next month. I'll notice that they'll probably just stay up in the top left corner the whole time. And it's at that point that last year I saw the male start cruising a lot more, and that's when I started introducing him. So for the month of June and July, the male spent pretty much all this time in with the female. If I noticed for a day or two I didn't see a lock, I'd just take him back out for a few days and then pop him back in, and he'd be a little bit more invigorated. And that used to get them going. And I left it exactly like that until the photo you shared before of the female in ovulation. That's when I changed it. That's when I started to bring the temps back up. And I brought those temps back up over about a week. So back from those winter temperatures and the winter photo period, straight back up to the 12 hours of heat, 30-degree hot spot, things like that. And that's when I took the male out and I just let her go until she did her thing.
Okay. So the amount of heat that you provide winter-wise is a couple hours less than the peak summertime heat, I guess what you're saying, which makes sense.
Yeah.
Cooler
So
time.
less heat, less temperature. So less heat, less light, because I reduced the photo period as well. I also reduced the humidity because I reduced the spraying. So during, particularly, again, this is just what worked. It may not work for others and it might not make sense to some, but during the month of April, which obviously we've just finished, I'm trying to show them, hey, you've got an abundance of food. It's nice and warm. It's nice and humid. So I'll go from 3-week feed increments. I go to 1 week. So during the month of April, I fed every single week all of the animals that will go into breeding. Again, it's just what worked last year. But instead of a larger item, it'll be a much smaller item. I'm not trying to make them fat. I'm trying to psychologically tell them, hey, there's an abundance of food. And the humidity, I make sure I spray them every 2 days. Right? A little bit more so that you get basically a spike in humidity and a spike in the abundance of food. And obviously I'm hydrating them a little bit more because each of those items are getting a lot more water. And then it's just like a switch. That's it. No more food. And then I start bringing things down. I'm trying to show the animals, or at least let them experience a more drastic, or at least a more noticeable change in the environment. Right? Because at least for all the other species I've ever worked with, cycling is very critical to breeding them. Right? So I'm trying to say to the animals, hey, it's winter now. Things are different. Things are changing. You've gone from abundance of heat, abundance of humidity, a long photo period, a lot of food, everything's good, to, I can feel that decline in humidity. I'm spraying less. I'm feeding not at all. The temperature's dropping. The light, the photo period's reducing. All right. Basically showing, yep, the environment's different now. And what I've always, what I noticed last year, but I noticed it with all the other species I keep anyway. What I notice is that the behavior changes. So last year they stopped seeking the food. By the end of May, no one went into ambush mode whatsoever. Not for months, not at all. Everything. Down. They just shut themselves down. And then the male started cruising. Then he was looking for something.
We have to remember you're coming into your winter now, right?
That's opposite.
Yes, yeah.
We're coming into the heat of our summer here in Texas. You're coming into your winter now, right?
Yeah.
So June, July, August, those are cool months for you. Is that correct?
So you're November, Bill, is what he's talking about.
Yeah,
exactly.
Do the wild green trees there breed in the winter, or do they breed in the summer,
or all year round?
They don't
No
know.
idea.
Really?
I have no idea. Yeah. Someone might. I don't.
Well, but that's because you do that on purpose. Like you're seasonal, like Bill. Like there's a cutoff point where you don't even know if anything else is going to breed because you're not pairing. Like it's
No. I'm saying the wild green trees in Australia.
Oh, in the wild. Oh, like wild.
Yeah.
There's definitely a season, right?
Yeah.
The temperature drops.
So yeah.
So I don't have it with me, but is it Justin Julender's book? You know, that Green Tree Python book where they did a lot of the almost like a review of all of the scientific papers written, and predominantly their research was done on the Australian population because it's more accessible for the biologists. And one thing that was very clear in their book, and if you just look at the local temperatures around as close as you can get to the Iron Ranges where they're measuring, my temperatures that I just mentioned match the average temperature that's in their range. So I give them what is occurring there naturally during winter, and I'm giving them the temperature that is occurring. So even in summer in their range, it's hitting 32, 33 degrees during the day sometimes, right? And at night, there's nights of it dropping to 17, 18 degrees, for example, during winter, right? So I'm just replicating what is published temperatures. Right. And we know that obviously summer's more the wet season, the cooler months are the dry season. So I just increase humidity, decrease humidity. So to me, it just makes sense. Right. I just kind of doing what's published and summarized for me.
and I know you're not directly in the spot, but you're right there. Like you're you should be copying whatever that book says, because demographically, that's where you live. Like, not, like I said, not exactly, but pretty fucking close. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but even his temperature replications are very close to what we do, halfway around the world, just at a different time of the year.
Yeah, but we have to do more, Bill. Like as far as like the humidity side of things, and like you know what I mean. Like it's I know it sounds the same, but I mean I think it's different. Like being from there, Bill, like not fucking shipped across the world and in a different country. I feel like it's a little. I don't want to say. I'm not trying to take anything away from you, Jason, but I feel like keeping the way he's keeping is because that's where he should. That's how he should do it, because that's where he's from. You know what I mean? That makes sense.
Yeah, but my animals don't know that because they weren't hatched in Australia or Indonesia.
And that's why a lot of people could hatch chondros in captivity all year round, like because we're in control of the food, we're in control of like giving them the triggers. And like, in a sense, if you want to breed chondros 12 months out of the year, you can. If you individually cycle those animals the way you need to cycle them, which can be tricky and hard. That's a lot of attention to be paying. That's a lot of fucking, attention to detail right there. I feel like, the one thing I do love about everything that's happening for me, at least I know this could happen in one part of the year versus spreading it out all year. Because that just I'd rather get this shit over with. You know what I mean? Like bring me on the fucking hell and let me see what survives with me, and then I can fucking go to Bill's in September and party. You know what I mean?
You get a couple of months of painful neos to establish rather than 12 months of just painful neos trickling in to deal with all the
right. Concentrated misery is what I call it.
Yeah, exactly. 12 months of establishing stubborn feeders is that's not my idea of a good time.
All right, we're in the wrap-up topic of the episode. I'll go first, and then Bill or Alex will follow. We didn't talk much about the growth over the last few years in the Green Tree Python community down in Australia. Where do you see things headed here, Jason? Like, you're tapped in with some amazing keepers. The Boswells were just in the chats and whatnot. So where do you see the growth in the next few years over down in Australia?
I think the thing with green tree pythons here is I believe that like we aren't talking a new industry, right? So there's a lot to say here, right? So reptiles have only been available in our pet shops for about the last 10 years, for example. Prior to that, man, it was a very underground hobby, right? It wasn't very mainstream. So it's boomed. The hobby has just exponentially exploded, right? Because bearded dragons and carpet pythons and that are accessible everywhere now. So we're seeing a significant increase in the number of people keeping, right? Like my 5-year-old son starts school, suddenly the 2 kids in his class that have blue tongues like him, right? That was just unheard of. I would have been the only kid in the school when I was at school keeping a reptile, and people would get grossed out. It's a common thing now. So the hobby as a whole is just absolutely booming, in my opinion. And And generally speaking, I think in Australia, because again, we can't keep exotic species, right? We can only keep what's native. So you've kind of got limited python species that you're, available to you. You've got your Antaresia complex. They're all your little children's pythons groups, right? There's a lot of mutations in happening. And then you've got your carpet mutations as well, right? And they're your kind of two main ones. And you've got the Aspidites, your blackheads and womas. Anybody that keeps them, generally wants something more and colorful and things like that. And green tree pythons being, I would say that pinnacle, right? They're kind of what everybody, I think, sees and wants and desires. And they are accessible here. And the good thing is the people that will probably buy into them, well, they will have had experience with pythons. They're not going to be fresh off the street trying to buy their first snake being a green tree python. So I think we've had a lot of growth, and I think we're going to see a lot more growth in the hobby in general. And I genuinely think the green tree pythons are probably one of the most beautiful species you can keep down here. We can't keep emerald boas and things like that and all the other crazy ball python morphs. We don't have them. So as a naturally beautiful snake, I think they're incredibly desirable. We're starting to see more and more people take one or two to an expo. I took one of them to a reptile expo recently, and it got a lot of attention. A lot of new keepers are like, what the heck is this? I want one. It's amazing. I think it's really gonna grow. Like in short, I think the industry itself is growing, and I think everybody that takes a step into the industry, we all go straight to Google and start looking at all these cool animals that we could potentially want and desire. I think green tree pythons are very quickly put on everybody's list that has a carpet python or even an Antaresia. They want one. Maybe not for breeding, but they want one. And I think we all know you get one, you don't stop at one, right? you can't stop at one green snake.
I got a funny question to ask you real quick. Like let's just say the Australian government was like, all right, Jason, we'll allow one fucking species that's not native in here to start being shipped in here. Only one. What would you pick?
Easy.
What would you pick?
A basin.
Oh, the emeralds.
100%.
Wow.
That'd be them.
Oh, man.
If it was only one, it would be the basins.
Thanks for not saying.
I love the northerns as well, but if I've got to pick one, it's going to be. I love those things. For sure. 100% it would be that. That's a very easy one to answer. That's a dream species right there. I'll never get.
Alex or Bill wants to go with the wrap-up question.
Go ahead, Alex.
Are you a fan of hybrids? And I have a follow-up question. There's a reason I'm asking this.
Not the biggest fan, no.
Okay.
Like with I have a very, I guess, hypocritical exception, and that is I don't like hybridization in a lot of the Australian species because it's a newer phenomenon and it's a known act of hybridization, right? You're taking two very well-known for decades of being scientifically distinct species and mixing them. That I'm not into personally. I prefer pure species. Green tree pythons is that gray area, and this is where I sound hypocritical. It's a little bit different because technically speaking, up until 6 years ago, they're all the same species. So a lot of that designer lineage and stuff, especially what you guys are working with, they're all hybrids, right? Well, obviously not you,
I guess,
but it wasn't intentionally done. So it's kind of like they're a beautiful snake, and there was no. I guess there's the intention aspect. I wouldn't do it knowingly. Put it that way. Never would I do it knowingly. It's just.
I'm going there because Bill has rough scales, and he has green trees, but yet he refuses to breed them together, even though I have repeatedly asked him to do that many times.
Why would you do such a thing?
Because I want to see it. I want to see what happens, basically. Like
I know what happens, and Jason probably knows what happens because it's been done underground in Australia.
What happens? I'm curious.
Yeah,
I don't know
what happens.
I'd be honest, Bill, I don't know, but I tell you to answer your question, Alex, would I do it? No. Have I discussed doing this with friends like 10 years, 15 years ago when roughies were, new, and obviously knowing that they're kind of, one of the closest related species? We used to joke about it and hypothesize what we'd call them. And I remember we used to refer to them as gruffies. Green tree python, rough scale python, like a gruffy. So we used to hypothesize.
But is that something that could happen in the wild though? Do their ranges overlap?
Not a chance.
No,
not a chance.
No. The environment for rough scale pythons is a micro environment. I mean,
what about diamonds though? What about diamonds and chondros?
No.
There's your Chondro, so you could do that. They'd never accident. I don't think there's much that overlaps with greens here. You're never going to get naturally occurring integrations or anything. We have natural integrations between coastal carpet pythons and diamond pythons.
Yeah.
Up on a bit north of the Central Coast in New South Wales, there is a distinct kind of gray area of where the genetics is kind of a blend of the two, and I've discussed this on a different podcast, but there is a distinct integration, like an integrate, right? They aren't a diamond python and they're not a coastal carpet python. And if you take a diamond and a coastal and put them together, you don't get an integrate, you get a hybrid. What you get in certain locations, up around, Port Macquarie and a bit north of that, for example, is what has been an evolved natural integrate, or that transition zone genetically. And you do see the phenotype kind of is a blend. All right. And they're actually quite beautiful, but unfortunately there's very few around in captivity now because so much has been mixed with the carpet mutations and stuff. But in terms of, I'll give you an example. It'd be kind of like taking some kind of snake out of an arid region of Central America and getting it to breed with something from, I don't know, maybe somewhere down where MJ is, right? They're significantly geographically separated.
How about a chondro ball? Okay.
Well, well, that has happened as well.
Unbelievable. This is getting me like I feel gross talking about this. Can we switch the topic, please? Jesus Christ.
Invited Alex on this podcast.
Yeah, I feel greasy. Thank you. All right. What's your wrap-up topic or question, buddy?
I had a different wrap-up question, but Jason, you mentioned expos in Australia. Give me just like a quick reptile expo in Australia. What does that look like?
Yeah, so look, they're actually getting better, right? As in they're becoming a little bit more showy and impressive, and that's obviously there's a couple of individuals who privately set up the expos, and I think they're doing a great job. Like the recent ones up in Queensland, and that I think are probably the top tier of our expos in Australia because they're individually set. Like an independent person sets it up, and they do a great job, and they've got a lot of support by the local breeders up there. The biggest issue we have, I think, and why I'd love to see the style of expo you guys have. I'd love to see that replicated down here. We have issues where even the state authorities and the national parks with their licensing strictly regulates it. So technically in New South Wales, if I was to set up a stall at an expo, I'm not allowed to put up a banner that this is technically speaking. I'm not allowed to put up a banner that is my breeding name. Like I wouldn't be able to have an Aussie Arboreal banner technically. All right. I'm allowed to have my name and my license number. That's it. Oh. It's not meant to be commercialized, in terms of those expos, right? Even prior to going and setting up the stall, whoever the organizing person is, you've got to fill out paperwork, tell them what species you're bringing and all of that sort of stuff. And again, they get the clearance from the national parks to allow you to take them. You can't just simply rock up and buy a table and set up. There is the legality and licensing aspect to it, which I genuinely think restricts our potential here, unfortunately. Right? But, you can't.
But James, can you buy, if you go to an expo in Australia, can you buy an animal?
You can. You can buy reptiles off the breeders. Again, the purchaser needs their license. The vendor would obviously have their license. The vendor can only sell what they've documented that they're bringing. You're not meant to even take out the animal and let the customer hold it or see it or kind of, like they pick it in the container. The regulations are now putting restrictions on, the size of the actual enclosure you can display those animals in for the purchase. And there's a lot of restrictions. I think we all dream of the day where we got those big expos like you guys, but I also think that we unfortunately, and I hope to see it change, what would be awesome is if a lot of the the suppliers and brands, we're not talking like, the custom enclosures and stuff, but, Habitat, Herbstat, Exoterra, all these brands, it'd be great to see them invest more from a sponsorship perspective because that would help the organizers actually take it to another level. So our expos, like the one in Sydney, which again, it's put on by a local herpetological society. I think they do a great job. But, it's in the western suburbs of Sydney on, 2 little basketball courts in a hall. right? It's not kind of a central, convention center type thing. It's not carpeted, and you got small booths and that. And it's not the organizers that are restricting this. It's just so I had a mate missed out buying his table for the last expo, and the organizers were unable to facilitate him getting a table. Still 2 weeks out from the expo. He was fully set up thinking he'd bought the table. He was going to be there and displaying and selling. They couldn't allow him to have a table because it was too late. They couldn't submit more paperwork to national parks. It was all these restrictions don't let that aspect of the hobby grow. But yeah, we can take them, we can sell them, we can do it's a breeders expo, but it's just a much smaller scale than what you guys would have with your bigger ones, and it's not as showy. Our vendors' tables don't tend to be as big because, again, we've got a little bit of restrictions there as well.
So it's your own government that's keeping the hobby from popping more in Australia, is what you're saying. Like it's
definitely a little bit so, yeah.
Because you're limited in a little bit. Damn, that sucks. Man.
Jason, have you been to the States?
He has.
I come to the States, once or twice a year for work. I'll be over there in August, actually.
And so you've been to a big US Expo?
No, not yet. It's all got to just line up for me. So I was talking to MJ the other day in the group, trying to say, all right, I'll be there in August. What can I see in August? Where can I go in August to just get my socks knocked off?
Come 1 month later, and we'll show you the time of your life.
Yeah, I reckon it would be awesome. Like when I'm over there, man, I'm the easiest guy to impress with, snakes, because you got to think we don't have anything that you guys have, right? So you show me a completely standard ball python, a $10 corn snake, and I'm just like, this is amazing, right? I don't see this stuff at home.
Jason,
I get to see this in the zoo.
Jason, what part of the U.S. are you coming to in August?
Reno, unfortunately. Nevada.
Yeah.
So I usually fly through LAX or San Fran. I was meant to be in San Diego this year, but a slight change of employment situation meant that trip was cancelled. But still work for the same scenario. I just didn't have to attend what I wanted to go to in San Diego. But I do every year. I come to Nevada, and additionally, every year I probably potentially either end up in Boston or San Diego for a trip. So I flew through Dallas last year actually to get to Boston.
Listen, if you have a layover in Dallas, I'm 25 minutes from the DFW airport, so you're welcome.
Good to know.
Anytime you come through Dallas.
I
might strategically introduce a layover.
I recommend it. Hey, good episode, Jason. I appreciate you coming by. Spending your morning here with us. Where can people follow all your work? Will you say Instagram's the most place you're active?
Yeah, look, I'm on Instagram and Facebook. I post the same content. I prefer Instagram. I think it's just easier to work with, and I just like scrolling pictures. So, but yeah, Instagram's my preference. But I'm on there, not sharing much, but as much as I can.
All right. Well, I'll put the link in the description below. Please, guys, go give them a follow. And I'm sure we'll see you back here on Trap sometime. I appreciate it, Jason.
Yeah, great, guys. Good to catch up. Thank you for having me. And hopefully I'll get to catch up with you guys in the States, not too far from them.
All right, guys. Give it a wrap. It's a wrap for Jason Patterson, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Jason.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good day. I'm going to bed.
Later, Jason.
I'm going back to work. Don't tell my boss I'm here, all right?
Later, buddy. Have a good one, all right, Jason?
See you guys. Cheers.
See you later.
Good episode, man. God, dude, I love it when we have an Australian keeper on, but every time I bring him on and hear how strict shit is over there, I'm like, dude, half the fun is like I'll fucking get whatever I want anytime I want. I don't need to apply for a goddamn thing. And I feel like that's what makes it fun. I don't know. Call me crazy, dude.
It's weird how restrictive they are with their own species. The ones that are even native there.
But I feel like that's why, though, because they're protecting their own species. Like there are stuff even here in California that they protect native-wise, technically with like permits, that nobody really follows. Which that makes sense. Like, they're protecting what they have, I guess. But it just, dude, they don't fuck around over there. They really don't.
Yeah, no, they don't. I guess it's just such a tropical climate. Like almost any reptile could thrive over there.
Yeah.
If they were to get loose.
It's always cool to have them on. What'd you think of tonight's show, Bill?
Yeah, I mean, I always like getting the Australian guys on. Not so much to see what they're working with, but to see you know, the differences, the nuances, you know, in like kind of what Alex said and what you said, the restrictions, and, you know, even their state by state is just so different. Every time we have one on, it's just, they have different restrictions and different ways to, whether it's shipping an animal or keeping an animal or selling an animal or expos. I'm just fascinated by all the differences that they have over there. And you know, obviously it does, it really puts them in the back seat as far as like trying to produce, you know, bringing their stuff to, you know, to the next level. If you're a strictly locality guy, you know, great. But if you want to, you know, just produce some crazy, wacky, wild hybrids, you know, now they're hybrids, you know, everything I produce is a hybrid. You know, they can't do it, you know. So it's very eye-opening to me to listen to these guys talk and listen to what they're working with and their restrictions. And, you know, it's different, you know. In one respect they can't have it, but in the other respect it's in their backyard.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I just can't help to feel at the end of every Australian breeder episode we have, I just wish I could donate a pure Biak to him. Like,
right? I know, right?
Here, take one of my 40, please.
Here's a $7,000 captive bred Biak.
Yeah.
Because nobody, like,
go to town, you know.
Nobody replies to my pure Biak stories more than Australian keepers. They're all
right?
They just fucking they drool over it, and I feel like most people in the States here take pure Biaks for you know, pure advantage, you know. But
well, listen, MJ. I mean, you know, you're in the minority of producing pure Biaks. Most people that has a Biak female, you know, they're trying to breed it into some crazy designer shit.
Yeah,
you know.
Well, Patrick Holmes taught me right, you know.
Yep.
But no. Hey guys, I really appreciate Alex. You're the real one for stepping up tonight, coming through. Amazing Arboreals on YouTube. Go subscribe.
Cranking out YouTube stuff. Cranking it out.
And on IG, you'll stay up to date. Hey Alex, I know you ended up pairing some stuff, and you got some locks happening right now, right? A little late season action going on.
Yeah, I just paired up a few animals. That's why I'm in the living room tonight. So just kind of wanted to let them be and see what happens.
Yep. And of course, Phoenix Reptiles on Instagram. Go subscribe to Bill's IG subscription. Definitely, if you're looking to learn from some of the best, you can't miss that from Phoenix Reptiles. So, Bill, thank you so much. Alex, you guys are awesome. Give it up to wrap for Bill Stiegel. Alex Warren, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks. See you later, MJ. See you, Bill.
Have a good night, guys. Thank you so much. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much. Before you guys head out, please hit that like button for all the Australian keepers out there. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that notification bell. Select all. You'll be reminded every single podcast released out of the network. Of course, if you're looking for exclusive content, come join the Trap Talk Patreon family. Click the very first link in the description below. Appreciate all the love and support. You guys are real ones. And before we let you guys go, check out the sponsors. One of the biggest growths we have in the reptile industry today are the rare species of reptiles that aren't worked with. That's right. That's why I went ahead and partnered up again with Brian Susan over at SUNDOWN Reptiles. Brian works with species such as kahua geckos, gargoyle geckos, all species of tree monitors. He works with Abronia and many other cool species geckos that you can check out all on his website. Head over to sundownreptiles.com, see what he has available. Brian's one of the best doing it in the reptile industry today. He's been on the show multiple times, so make sure you check out all of Brian Susan's episodes on Trap Talk Reptile Network. But more importantly, for the highest quality of captive bred reptiles, make sure you head over to sundownreptiles.com and make sure you give him a follow on Instagram. Thank you again, Brian Susan over at SUNDOWN Reptiles. One of the things I love about being a part of the reptile industry is all the learning, okay? Learning can be fun, and I can prove that to you. Thank you so much to today's sponsor. It's Gary Scavino over at GS Reptiles. I highly recommend you head over to his YouTube channel, follow all this man's content when it comes to learning about rare species of snakes you could be keeping in the hobby, and also just finding out how easy a lot of these rare species of snakes are to keep. in general. So thank you so much, Gary Scavino of GS Reptiles. Again, head over to his YouTube channel. Also head over to his Instagram to be on top of all of his current work and be ready for a big year over at GS Reptiles. Thank you so much, Gary, for your ongoing support. I really appreciate it. Cheers. Sorry for the interruption, folks, but a quick word from our sponsors. Green tree pythons, emerald tree boas, and plenty other arboreal snakes have been quite the popularity here at the Trap Talk Reptile Network, which brings me to today's sponsor, the Reptile Perch. Head over to the reptileperch.com and Reptile Perch on Instagram. See what type of design PVC perch is best for your arboreal reptile. But first and foremost, I would also check out David Brom's Green Tree Python availability on the website. And you can also check out his Instagram just to stay current on any projects or any productions that he posts. Thank you so much, David Broms, for your ongoing support. Looking forward to seeing what you have to show in the 2025 season. When you think about building a good community and being a leader of that community, nobody comes to mind better than Mark Hager over at Texas Chondros. That's right. Make sure you head over to TX Chondros on Instagram and also head over to Mark's website. See what he has available Green Tree Python wise and be ready for quite the 2025 Green Tree Python breeding season out of Mark Hager. He's a veteran in the Green Tree Python game, one of the best and nicest breeders in the Green Tree Python game. He's been putting on the whole state of Texas for as long as I've known him. So if you want to see all the amazing other chondro keepers out of the state of Texas, another good reason to go follow Mark Hager over at TX Chondros on Instagram. And again, head over to his website, texaschondros.com. You can find all the links in the description below. Thank you so much, Mark Hager, for supporting the Trap. Cheers.